A Victim Bites Back, show number 92. And you may notice that I've got rid of that horrible beard. I really hated having it. It made me feel unclean. Almost every morning I woke up and thought, oh, I wish I could have a shave. I hated all the feel of the bristles around my mouth and my chin and my neck and everywhere. I really didn't like it at all. The texture of the hair that grows with a beard and moustache, it's all sort of rough and much thicker and just horrible. Everything about it I hated. I actually only grew it for the film 3 Women, which is now being edited together, and I will doubtless be revealing it to you in due course.
It's good to be back in the south of France and having a meal at the restaurant on the beach of the Carlton Hotel, where my favourite artichoke vinaigrette. They prepare the artichokes so they're absolutely 100% defenestrated of all the choke part, and serve it with the best vinaigrette I've ever had. And I have to say, a delicious rum punch served in a coconut. And after that, I have the fantastic sole meunière that they serve with truffle potatoes, that's mashed potatoes with black truffles, and ratatouille. What more could a boy ask? When I asked them, where does your soul come from, they replied, Dover, of course. The best souls come from Dover.
So Joe Biden, who I know is a fan of A Victim Bites Back, like everybody of importance, he watches every episode, took my advice and resigned. He seems like a really decent man who's done very well in life, became president of the United States, and it now looks as though Kamala Harris will be taking over. I'm not convinced by her. She used to be a prosecutor in California. That's not a good start. And also she's a woman, and that, while not automatically disqualifying her, Margaret Thatcher was a great Prime Minister, although I disagreed with a lot of her policies. But basically women have different instincts and different brain workings and different approaches to life. I've said this before, I'm not a misogynist. I think women are fabulous, and many women friends of mine I love dearly. They are intellectually my superiors, many of them. They think in different ways. Individuals are all different anyway. But basically, females and males have quite different characteristics in many ways. And I think one of them is males generally are better at the art of governing than females. Look at England and you see Maggie Thatcher, who was pretty damn good in many ways, and then Theresa May, who was absolutely ghastly, mainly because she was a woman and all her instincts went the wrong way. And Liz Truss, who was even worse. Actually, being a woman wasn't the problem with Liz Truss. It was just that she was bonkers that didn't help. Anyway, let's see what goes on in America. As I said before, my instincts tend to be democratic socially. Some would say I'm extreme left-wing in some of my attitudes. For instance, thinking Jeremy Corbyn could have been a damn good Prime Minister and had some very, very good qualities about him. But likewise, I tend to feel that an awful lot of the left-wing approaches are wrong, i.e. communism, which has got many, many very good aspects to it, but the basic economic problem is massive and it just doesn't work. I think responsible capitalism, encouraging the entrepreneurs, which I have to admit I was, to make as much money as they can and then be as generous with it as possible to those who are not making money and need to be looked after. People like Bill Gates, who I think does a terrific job. In our music industry, Bruce Springsteen, not generally known, but he is such a generous, fine and upstanding human being. and these talents as a music person, which were enormous, one of the greatest in my opinion, are neither here nor there. Essentially, he made a fortune and he gives a fortune away. That to me is responsible capitalism, and I thoroughly approve of it.
Talking of great leaders, one of my favourite ever songs and records was recorded by Dion. It was on UK Records, and you can get it on our 80 Greatest Hits CD collection, Abraham, Martin and John.
Anybody here seen my old friend Abraham? Can you tell me where he's gone? He freed a lot of people, but it seemed good they die young. You know, I just looked around and he's gone. Anybody here seen my old friend John? Can you tell me where he's gone? He freed a lot of people, but it seemed good they die young. I just looked around and he's gone. Anybody here seen my old friend Martin? Can you tell me where he's gone? He freed a lot of people, but it seemed good they die young. I just looked around and he's gone. Didn't you love the things that they stood for? Didn't they try to find some good for you and me? And we'll be free someday soon. He's gonna be one day. Anybody here see my old friend Bobby? Can you tell me where he's gone? I thought I saw him walking up over the hill with Abraham and Martin and John.
Total change of topic, but have you noticed an incredible lack of insects this summer? In some ways that's a good thing. There's very many fewer mosquitoes around. I've not been bitten at all in the south of France or in Great Britain, although I have to admit I was bitten a couple of times in Morocco, in Marrakesh, where normally there aren't any insects at all, or not any mosquitoes anyway. But I've noticed this with all these kinds of insects. Here in the south of France, there's a lot of lavender bushes in the gardens in my hotel in Sophia Antipolis, and one of them is always, when they're in flower, all the lavender, covered in white butterflies, which seem very attracted to the scent of lavender, as indeed I am. And this year, it was amazing. During the entire lavender period, there was only ever one white butterfly on the huge lavender bush. And I noticed it or its relations many times walking past it and thought to myself, what has happened to all the others?
As I drive around the south of France, I notice that the tourism problem is extraordinary. I think probably since COVID, when people realised they really had to get out of their homes and even their countries, it's become appalling all over the place. That's why places like Venice put on a tourist tax. I gather Barcelona is just doing the same now. And even driving around here, there are so many tourists in every place. Two restaurants of mine down in the south of France, which I raved about, I suppose, 10 years ago. And I said they both deserved Michelin stars. And sure enough, in the last few years, they've both been awarded Michelin stars and are now totally packed out weeks in advance. I can't get in them anymore. And I turn up and they say, "Oh, Mr. King, so pleased to see you. Thank you for everything you did for us so many years ago. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have got our Michelin stars," and all the rest of it. And then I say, "Could I have a table?" They say, "Oh, no, we're terribly sorry. We're completely booked up and we've not got anything to spare. And that's for the next 6-7 weeks. We can accommodate you in 8 weeks if you like." I go, "Fuck off." You may remember last episode I suggested that whoever took over as the Democratic candidate should immediately say that when they are elected, if they are elected president in America, they will pardon Donald Trump for all the various things he may have been found guilty of, but also will scrap all the stupid charges against him because they agree that it's a time for reconciliation and that most of those should never have been brought about and were brought about for political reasons. Now, I don't know about you, but that would really make me favour the Democratic candidate because although Trump has got so many things against him and I can't stand most of his policies and I think he sounds like the most dreadful human being, the reality is he is very popular. He says a lot of things that make sense, rather like the appalling Nigel Farage does. There's always sense in there as well as all the rubbish. So, and also, I think most people have got to hate this whole approach that they take, of belittling the opposition. And I really don't think Trump does himself any favours by running down Biden and now Harris. I actually also think very strongly that most people who are fed up with this would have voted for Trump perhaps because of the disgraceful way his enemies and his opponents behaved, using the law to break the law, something we know all about. So my advice to Kamala Harris is don't do what you're now doing, which is being as rude about Trump as he is being about you. Be conciliatory. Pretend at least to be generous and open-minded. Even say that you think Trump has had some good ideas and did some good things when president, and that you would actually do similar things in some ways. And I think you will wipe the board that way. In fact, I think that's the only way. And now we see the awful Keir Starmer, who I really can't stand, although I generally think the policies he's bringing about with Labour in government are very good. Now he's suspended 7 MPs who dared vote against the government on this child benefits situation. Now, as it happens, I disagree with those critics, which include Jeremy Corbyn, who think the ban should be lifted. I actually think Keir Starmer is doing the right thing. There just isn't enough money to pay for those extra children over the 2 that you have. But I don't think it's particularly important. I think it's something that's not a major thing. But what it does actually say is Starmer intends to run this as a dictatorship. Now, I think he's quite right to do that because democracy doesn't work any longer. But actually, by suspending the Labour MPs, he's given a great chance to Jeremy Corbyn, who, as you know, I'm a big fan of. I think he's a decent, good man, although I disagree with a lot of his policies. I also think John McDonnell is a really good man and would have made an excellent Chancellor. However, he's one of the 7 who've been suspended. If I was Jeremy Corbyn, I'd get together with John McDonnell now and I would immediately form a party called New Labour, or actually perhaps better, Socialists. And I would be the head, Corbyn, with my Chancellor, Shadow Chancellor, John McDonnell, and I would ask the other 6 MPs who've been suspended if they would join, instead of all being independents, that they would join it up. And I bet you at least a couple of dozen of the existing Labour MPs would also join it. And a new party, which is much more left than what the way Labour is with Starmer, and yet, and as you know, I don't agree with a lot of the economic policies and the way that the socialism and even more communism tends to go too far in that direction and not far enough in the other direction. But on the other hand, whilst disagreeing with their attitude towards child benefits, for example, I'm really on the side of Corbyn, who seems to be the only politician brave enough to stand up and say what's going on in Gaza is appalling and must be changed immediately. So I'm 100% on his side on that. I'm 100% on his side of scrapping Trident and using the money to shore up our cyber defences as opposed to the stupid old war ways. But either way, I think that kind of socialism, especially if he then gets together with the Lib Dems and talks to them and says, look, you've got an awful lot of your policies that we approve of too. We really don't like the current Labour policies and we don't like the Tories at all. We would therefore be only too happy to go into government as a coalition with the Lib Dems if you'd be interested in, when there is another election, which I think will be very shortly, by the way, the moment Keir Starmer is arrested and charged with sex offences, probably historical sex offences, thanks to his policy as DPP a few years ago. But either way, that they would then be in a very strong position to take over government, which I think would then be very good government, because all the extreme left-wing things would be blunted down by the Lib Dems. That's my theory anyway. Over to you, Mr. Corbyn and Mr. McDonald. I offer it to you free of charge.
Also free of charge, as we watch the glorious sunny south of France and people exercising and swimming in the Mediterranean, the Olympics opening ceremony in rainy Paris was an absolute disaster. As the producer of both the Brits, after a disastrous show before I took over, and Eurovision, which the UK won and we then hosted, I could have easily told the organisers of the opening ceremony in Paris that it would be a disaster to stage the opening ceremony outside. I spent most of the time thinking to myself, those poor athletes, how many are not only going to get heavy colds, but may well die of pneumonia before they even get to perform their part. And also those poor extras on poles, the ladies on poles, in the pouring rain. I must say, not only would I have thought that dangerous, but possibly lethal. They do seem to have survived. And I couldn't believe that man who was running with the flame over the rainy rooftops and didn't slip anywhere. And the dancers choreographed in that on that runway, none of them seemed to slip. I thought they all did marvellously well. But all in all, it was ghastly. And full praise to the Daily Mail, which is really the only paper that dared say this was a complete disaster. Everyone says except for Celine Dion at the end. And I have to admit I've not managed to witness that yet, because I got so put off by watching all those awful boats floating down the Seine with drowning athletes on them, that I actually gave up when they hit the disco level, which I thought was also ghastly. I remember that song from the 1970s, and I turned off and went to sleep. Great news for A Victim Bites Back viewers. Exclusive this week, we shall be putting a free watch download of Three Women up on these sites. So get ready for that. A full-length movie. How wonderful. See you next episode.